Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining for another Accessibility Lunch and Learn that is sponsored by the Province of Nova Scotia's Accessibility Directorate. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome back Corey Melanson, who works for their company is Sea Change Collab, and Sea Change Collab has been a big support in regards to helping us all become better educated, trained, and learning more about accessibility, particularly when it comes to the work that we're all doing in our municipalities and communities to make our spaces and our places, our workplaces, our communities more accessible and equitable to everyone. So today's session is on creating accessible content and some AI tools, artificial intelligence tools to help us do these things. So welcome, Corey, and I will
Thanks.
pass this over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Julie. So my name is Corey Melanson. As Julie said, I am kind of the principal and strategy lead with Sea Change Collab. I use the pronouns she, they, and I usually do my introduction saying that I'm a white, queer, neurodivergent settler. So both naming my kind of more marginalized identities, but also those dominant ones. And because that really influences the lens that I bring to my life and my work. Sea Change is a team of four, and we do have a kind of an intersectional team, and all of us have lived experience with disability in particular. So just that's kind of how we position ourselves in this work. And we have some funding through the federal government and through something called the ACE project, ACE standing for Accessibility Confident Employers. And so the goal of ACE is to really build the capacity of Nova Scotia employers, um, you folks, prescribed public sector bodies, as well as nonprofit and for-profit organizations. Oh, I realize my AirPods are dying. Can you still hear me? Okay.
I was on too many meetings this morning, so hopefully this still works. So today's topic is really around kind of alternative formats. And so I just want to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page, sort of big picture. So just let me make sure I've done all the things to make this big screen and all of that. I am not in my office today, so oh, you can see all of that. Okay, good. So I don't have all my usual screens. How does this look? Does that look better? Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we are kind of understanding where kind of alternative formats fits in. And then I do want to do some demonstrations of what are some of the tools we're using at Sea Change to ensure that we can create alternative formats without creating a lot more work. And that's really using AI tools. So, just to start, I'm sure this is very familiar to you folks, but 2 in 5 Nova Scotians have a disability, and nearly everyone knows someone with a disability, or we will acquire a disability kind of at some point in our lives. And there's many ways that people access information and communication based on their individual preferences, and kind of more significantly because of their differing abilities to see, to hear, and to understand information or communicate with others. So I'm not sure where all of you folks are coming from, but I assume probably mostly municipal perspectives. And so in thinking about your own municipalities, if nearly 40% of folks in your municipality or region have a disability, how might we have to change the way we're providing kind of information and communication to ensure that everyone can really access it? So that's kind of what we're talking about today. And what accessible communication means, it means that, making kind of content, whether it's electronic or general content, available and usable by everyone at the same time, kind of with the same use. So really, information and communication accessibility benefits everyone. Maybe it's someone with a disability, but maybe it's also someone whose additional language is English, or someone who has, for example, lower literacy rates, and they might need, you know, messages to be read to them or messages in plain language, for example. So really accessible communication really tries to make information clear, direct, and easy to understand, and takes into consideration the various barriers for accessing information and provides opportunities for feedback. So these are sort of the, you know, key elements of accessible communication. And I like to introduce this model to kind of say, okay, like what is accessible communication? What does it include? And then what are we focusing on today? So really, for our work at SeaChange, we talk about accessible communication as being having three elements. So really one is kind of plain language. And I know Amens has done a lot of work around sharing plain language training and resources. So I'm sure that you have access to some of those resources. So, you know, making sure that text formatting and the design of things we write and say is easy to understand and use. The other one is digital accessibility. So this is talking about, you know, this is the technology and tools that really makes websites and online documents accessible for all. So everything from, you know, what are the web kind of accessibility standards to making sure we include things like alternative text and image descriptions in our communication. That all falls under digital accessibility. Today, where we're focused is around alternative formats. So we might have information that's available in, you know, a print format, or maybe it's a video. And given that we know that 40%, almost 40% of the audience are people who might want that information in different ways, making sure that we're providing those alternative formats, whether it's print, online, video, audio, you know, sign language, and captioning. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. And then, as Julie said, we're talking about what are some tools, some AI tools, to really make sure that we can do that in a way that is not sort of cumbersome or adding a lot more work to our, you know, to our processes, and to our daily workload. And I'd say, you know, feel free to interrupt if you do have questions, because I know for me, being neurodivergent, sometimes I might have that question and then sort of I might lose it, right? So just feel free to ask your question. And Julie, I can't always see the chat or people's hands, so let me know. So just, I mean, I've asked this question a lot, but, you know, what do you think the biggest barrier to accessible communications is? What, you know, and feel free to write that in the chat or just come off mute. What do you think the biggest barrier is to accessible communications?
I think for us, it's, and I don't want to speak for others who are in the municipal sector, but I think for us, it's the legal requirements on the legal language that we do have to use. So as much as we want to strip down our language to plain language or accessible language, sometimes, you know, because of motions and all that jazz, we're required to use certain lingo. So that makes it kind of challenging.
So absolutely, that's a challenge for things like plain language when you work in a legal or sort of a highly complex or a kind of regulatory system. But I would say alternative formats for you would be very important. You can still convey some of the same information, even if it might be sort of a summary or whatever it might be in different formats, right? So thanks so much, Danielle.
It's
Oh,
Tammy.
someone else?
I think
Yeah.
one of our biggest barriers, or is also one of our greatest tools, just the whole use of social media being the way people want to communicate and receive their communication and information.
Yeah.
So it can be a great tool, but it can also be a huge pain, for lack of it, and a barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so just really thinking about those barriers as the things we really need to kind of proactively address, right?
Mhm.
So I always, oh, was someone else?
Yeah.
Go? Yeah.
Can I just add something to Corey? So
Yeah.
now that we're also starting to read some of the draft plans and the accessibility plan updates, accessible communications and plain language training and standards for municipalities is something that we're seeing. And in that, it's also identified, you know, that all staff need to be doing this and learning plain language, using plain language, and learning the tools that are out there so that it's not just left to the person at the end, like, so the person who's the communications professional or the person who's responsible for publicly posting, so that everybody along the line is doing the work. So again, it's taking that time to learn and to practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, really, what I like to share is that, yes, we can see it as, you know, maybe it's a resource barrier, maybe it's a, you know, as you say, Danielle, like, oh, but we're in a legal or a regulatory context. But ultimately, the biggest barrier is ableist attitudes. And so ableism is that form of discrimination and the false idea that disabled people are by default inferior when it's just another way for a mind and or body to be. So if we think about communicating in another way, and this is where alternative formats become really important. So, you know, some ways that ableism might show up in our digital environments are things like communications in a dominant language or in one type of document, lack of ASL, so American Sign Language interpreters when required, documents that are incompatible with screen readers, lack of closed captioning for videos, lack of transcripts for audio recordings, and then just lack of alternative formats. So there's a video, but yeah, is there a transcript? Is there an audio? Is there a text version, for example?
And Rachel put in the chat here when you asked about barriers, we tend to focus on the written communication and not explore other ways that people need. So
Absolutely.
exactly what you just said, yeah.
And so these sort of big considerations when we're thinking about accessible communications, like, are you sharing essential information? Who's your audience? Are you posting publicly on a website or social media? Is it going to be circulated for review and engagement? Are you collaborating on a document that can everyone access that? Are you sending information ahead of a workshop? What kind of document is it? These are all important considerations to think about. And as we know, and as Julie just mentioned, Nova Scotia's Information and Communication Standard is being developed, and this is all about ensuring that people can receive, understand, and share the information they need. And the key thing about the communication standard when it comes to all of the standards from built environment, employment, education, goods and services, and public transportation is that the communication standard is essentially the foundation of kind of all of them, because you need to communicate about all the standards. Just like I'm sure in municipalities, you are communicating all the time about everything from policies to updates to events to like so many different things. And just kind of to be clear, like, I'm not an expert in accessible communication, and in our team, we're still learning, but we're really aiming to share the why, what, and the how of accessible communication so more people, organizations, and businesses can really enhance accessibility.
Corey, I just want to note, so Jenny Thornhill is here from the Accessibility Directorate, and they posted, I am the staff person supporting the Information and Communication Standard Development. Yay.
Amazing. And Jenny,
Thanks for
I feel like
coming.
I haven't met you yet, so this is great. It's great to have you here. And so, yeah, so Jenny, do you want to come off mute and say anything? Just, what is your role and kind of where is that standard at in its development right now?
Sure, yeah. So we're in the early stages of the development. There's a standard development committee that's been established, and that's a group of around 22, 23 people with expertise in the field. And I was scribbling away notes, Corey, at the beginning when you were talking about the three components around plain language and digital accessibility and accessible formats. Those are some of the key areas that we're going to be looking at and studying to make recommendations. So over the next 18 months or so, that committee will make recommendations to the Accessibility Advisory Board. Then the board will look at them and advance them to the minister. And at that point, they'll be posted for public comment. But I'm sure we'll be reaching out to everyone before that, because part of it is going to be a public consultation probably next winter to touch base with folks around what the committee is recommending. So stay tuned. There'll be more to come on that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jenny. Really great for everyone to kind of know who you are and what the process is, for sure.
Thanks.
So when we're talking about alternative formats, what we're talking about is really flexible ways of learning and sort of communicating, right? So people interact, learn, and communicate in diverse ways. And, learning opportunities, communication opportunities are really increased when flexible ways of engaging with information are kind of provided. So it's really just diverse ways of exchanging information. So we think about, 3 types of kind of alternative formats. There's electronic, there's audio and video, and then there's Braille and large print. And so this isn't, this doesn't mean everything fits under here, but this is kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about alternative formats. And so electronic text is like, access to computer equipment and appropriate software really makes written information more accessible, because it's allowing people to research online, share documents, online sharing platforms, downloading documents, and written text really being converted into a format that is readable on the computer and accessed visually with screen magnification technology, or through auditory means with screen reading software or text-to-speech technology. So when something is in an electronic accessible format, then it is accessible to people who might need to read it, for example, with a screen reader. And that's, again, increasingly our Nova Scotia certainly has the highest number of people with disabilities in the country, and we know that those rates are only growing, and that's also among young people. It's not just kind of the senior population. So when we're thinking about sort of digital formats, we're thinking about even the format, right? So using a content list or a summary at the beginning of the document for navigation. A document has a logical, easy to follow reading order. There's an accessible font size and color contrast. Special symbols aren't used. Any images conveying important information have either a text description or alternative text. And then any graphic elements, set to kind of float behind or in front of text are generally not accessible. So when we're thinking of those sort of digital guidelines. When we think about audio, audio can be used by anyone who uses a tablet, a smartphone, a computer, or a CD player. And just think about, I know in my own life, the increase in how I'm using audio content. So now I typically listen to mostly audiobooks. Podcasts are really replacing a lot of other ways that people get their information. So really beneficial for people who are blind or have low vision. I started listening to audiobooks in a time when I had a concussion and could not be on a screen and couldn't even read a book. And so then so there's many reasons why someone may be turning to audio. So screen reading software can also provide audio feedback, so people can experience kind of that eyes-free reading experience. And it's really important with audio and video to always include a transcript. And so I'm going to show you a few ways to how do we create that transcript? So video, again, can be used by anyone with a tablet, smartphone, or a computer. Really beneficial for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, beneficial for neurodivergent people and visual learners. Closed captions and ASL add a level of accessibility. And again, important to always include a transcript. And then certainly captioning. So there's a difference between live and sort of closed captioning. And so what we know now with Zoom enabled closed caption. So anyone, I believe, I would hope, Julie, that AMANS has enabled closed captioning for all of your lunch and learns. And so, but I haven't tested that out. I'm not sure if you have. But often when when we're doing events, we let people know that it's on, yay. So we let people know usually at the beginning, and I'm sorry, I didn't note that. But that you can enable AI generated captioning. Now, is AI generated captioning perfect? No. It will often, if someone is not an English as a first language, any Mi'kmaq words, anything that is not, if anyone has sort of an accent, it doesn't always do a good job. So often people will ask for, live closed captioning. Currently in Nova Scotia, we cannot hire anyone from Nova Scotia to do live closed captioning. We have to hire people from Ontario or Alberta. I don't know, Julie, if you have any other comments or updates on that, but and there's a fee for that, right? So typically what we will do at SeaChange is we'll say, we have, AI generated closed captions. If you need something else, let us know and we will add that. I would say 9 times out of 10, folks are fine with the AI generated closed captions. But again, that's another way to kind of, even in meetings, to add that alternative format for a whole range of uses.
Corey, can I just jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
So closed captioning, when budgeting, if you are budgeting, really it comes to about $1,500 an hour for an event. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention for AI, for transcription and AI captioning, is people really need to speak a little more slowly and enunciate. And I find in a lot of meetings and virtual meetings in particular, some people have a tendency to speak really quickly. And again, as somebody with a brain injury, if somebody is talking really quickly, my brain just starts to shut down and I don't hear everything. And so I try to remind people also to speak more intentionally, slowly, as well as for the AI, but also somebody who may be using a hearing loop as well. It's really important.
Yeah, and if you have added, for example, American Sign Language, really challenging for ASL interpreters to keep up with someone speaking really fast. Tammy, I see your question in the chat, which I think is a really great one. Like, does it mean we don't have trained individuals or it's not allowed? It's really the first one. We don't have anyone trained who is offering that service that folks can book. And the other thing, Julie, it is expensive, and it's also you have to put in that request weeks in advance. So it's not something that you can do sort of at the last minute. So really great business opportunity for someone if they, would want to do that. So, did I go back to the beginning of my presentation somehow? Oh, sorry. I don't know
Yes.
how that happened. Yeah, I'm just like, okay. And I'm not in speaker view anymore. Wow. Okay. So sorry. I'm not sure how that happened. So as we just talked about, those closed captions can also be considered an alternative format, and it's just that text representation of auditory material. Description video. So this is one I would say I'm almost less familiar with, but this is when there's a video and you're providing sort of a narration of key visual elements, such as actions, characters, locations, costumes, and sort of sets of video material. And the idea is that it doesn't interfere with other dialogue or sound effects. Again, this is the one I'm sort of least familiar with. Braille, of course, is kind of a code used by people who are blind or have low vision. So it's a code and it's not a language. It's a tactile system through which letters, words, numbers, and symbols are represented using raised dots. And given that it's not a language, there are different Braille codes for different languages and even different levels of Braille kind of coding. My understanding, and Jenny, you may have more information on this, but is that given the kind of digital, many different alternative formats, is that, like, for example, the Accessibility Directorate a number of years ago said that they've never had a request for Braille, but that was probably back in 2023. So I think it's an interesting question, like is it a necessity given all the other technologies to translate into or not translate, but to create Braille formats? So Jenny, I don't know if you have any other insight on that. And maybe not. So we'll
Sorry,
check back.
my mouse was
Oh,
glitching
yeah.
there.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add there that I learned about recently is Braille dots on cache as being an important component, and kind of like those wearing off quickly. But yeah, otherwise I don't have
Like
anything
on paper money.
paper money. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And just, I think it would be interesting to understand, even from the perspective of the directorate or even AMANS, are there requests for Braille? I think like that would be a kind of an interesting thing to understand. What is the request, or the, like, is there a barrier here? I know that I applied for some funding, Sea Change applied for some funding to create alternative formats from the federal government. We didn't get the funding, but one of the big components was Braille. And I was a little surprised by that, because I had heard that, and we've never had a request for Braille either. And I had heard the directorate hadn't had requests. So I was like, okay, I wonder if this is still something that is in demand.
So I would just say, from my understanding, and again from the work that we've done with CNIB, and then also from the recent elections and information that comes from the elections. So with in-person elections, there are like these Braille templates for voting. So they're very important, and they are used and requested. And then the other thing, of course, is signage and wayfinding, continuing to have Braille and tactile for signage and wayfinding.
Yeah, so those are some really great examples. So paper money, paper ballots, and signage and wayfinding that, but I guess less maybe alternative formats, because they're using technology. There are many different ways to do that. Large print, we don't often think about large print as an as an alternative format, but it really is. Really thinking about folks who have trouble reading print or sort of deciphering kind of crowded text. And large print usually ranges from 16 to 22 point, while giant print is anything over 24 point. Now, typical accessible font size is usually 12 to 14. 14 being ideal. So anything above that then is considered large print. And that is another one that is like fairly easy to do, right? So you could have a large print version of a PDF, for example. Again, with technology such as e-readers, tablets, and computers, individuals can often self-select the size of type that suits them, just given sort of the situation and the environment. So again, important to understand kind of your audience in terms of what the barriers are, and if you're going to put energy into alternative formats, which ones are the priorities, for example. So, a bit of a checklist, is your content available in video, audio, e-text? Do you have captions? Do you include ASL? Is there a transcript, for example? Yeah, and I see some good questions here in the chat about, have any municipalities explored making their accessibility plans available in Braille? And Julie, any specific feedback on that? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't know yet. It would be a good question for the Equity Leads email list to find out, Danielle, if you want to pose that. Love to know. And I do know that when we're talking about formats, I do know that some municipalities also have their business cards with Braille as well. And there is a local supplier in Nova Scotia who can do that instead of having to send it to Toronto like you used to.
Julie, can you put that in the chat that if you know that local supplier, and maybe you don't, but
I'm not off my head, it's in my email, but I will find
okay.
it.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Advocate printing. Look at
Advocate
that.
printing.
Someone
Thanks,
else
Nicole.
Yeah. So really important. Thanks, Nicole, for having that. Great. So what I want to do now is so I guess, are there any questions about kind of what alternative formats are and what we're talking about before we kind of dive into how to do this? Julie, your typing is very loud if you are able to mute yourself. Any questions about kind of what alternative? I guess my question for all of you here is, do you already use alternative formats? Does anyone use alternative formats right now?
No, all your information is just like coming in fresh. So
Okay. So that fresh perspective. Great. So I guess and you'll see even in sort of the PowerPoint slides, there's lots there about kind of learning, and that's because that's kind of my wheelhouse. So we at SeaChange are using, we do a lot of training, and we offer all of our training around accessibility for free through our funding for the ACE program. And so what we're aiming to do is ensure that all of that information, all that we're communicating, is available in alternative and accessible formats. So I want to just show you kind of what that means first. And then second, how did we do it? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take you, and I'm not in the right, but I'm going to take you to our learning platform. And so this is just me signing into this, and I'm going to take you to, right now we had a cohort around accessibility, confident leadership. Rochelle, I see your hand, and I'm going to get that to you, or get to you in just a second.
Yeah.
So here's an example of, we're going to see stuff here. So this is around outlining the accessibility continuum. And here you'll see a video. So we say, watch this 9-minute video that introduces workplace inequities, or listen to the audio file below, or download the text transcript. And then we make sure that everyone knows, because this is a video embedded in our learning management system, in order to access the closed captions, folks need to click watch on YouTube in order to be able to click closed captions. So you'll see here, right below is the audio version. And there's closed captions on that as well. And then as a download, sorry, you're seeing all the discussions that people have added here. Where's the download? In the downloads, they can download the transcript. So that one video, actually, there's a video, there's a transcript, there's an audio, and in the video, there's closed captions. In addition, what we are doing now, because we did receive funding from the federal government to add ASL, we're adding ASL to all of our videos. So that will be an additional component. Again, as Julie said, I mean, ASL is another thing that you require a budget for. We do have ASL interpreters in Nova Scotia, and so it's possible to book them. And so what how we're adding ASL is we're actually giving them the link to our videos, and then they are recording the American Sign Language to sync up with that. And then we're kind of adding the ASL to the video. And so currently for 8 of our trainings, we have 50 plus videos to add ASL to. And so that's a project in and of itself. Rochelle, I see your hand.
Hi, thank you. Just waiting for my video.
And
to
are
load.
you Rachel or Rochelle? I'm
It's
sorry.
Rachel. Yeah,
Rachel,
that's okay.
sorry.
So you had asked about if we were using alternative means of communication. I guess I just wanted to mention that we had a opportunity, well, a barrier, I guess, happened a couple of years ago. We have a member of staff who is deaf, and he communicates with ASL as one of his methods of communication. And we had a member of the public that wasn't able to contact us because they weren't sure how to communicate with us. So there's like a really close-knit deaf community, and through that community they had contacted that member of staff, and that member of staff was able to go on Zoom and communicate with that person. It was something to do with the water main leak or something like that was quite important to deal with. So I get that's been kind of playing in my mind as to how we can address that on our website. But I know it's not realistic for us to have everything available via ASL. You know, there's just a way to be able to provide that service or offer offer something along those lines, but in a reasonable, cost-effective way. So I guess I'm just interested in what you started to delve into just now.
Yeah, absolutely. And ASL, I mean, we're just beginning to kind of understand and delve into kind of the AI tools that are coming for ASL. And I do have a bit of a we just did an AI for social impact and accessibility skill builder. So we do have a bit of a learn more document, which I can share with you, Julie, and you can post on your site. So there are some links in that document. One thing I would say is because I did some work with 211 Nova Scotia, don't hesitate to contact 211 for translation services. And they can get translation within seconds. And I think that, I don't know, Julie, if AMANS has done a lot of work with 211 around that, but I think that actually, I know we're recording this, but that could be a really fruitful kind of partnership. So I just know through my other work that they do that. I'm not sure if that extends to ASL, but I would imagine that it could. So that's something to maybe park, and we'll come back to that. So I guess I want to show you a couple of so how did we create these alternative formats? So right now I'm going to go into my my Zoom account. And so we create videos in Zoom because Zoom has AI enabled content. Now, I don't know if this is true of Teams or other video programs. So I'm just going to show you Zoom, and I'm going to show you how it works in Zoom. And then the onus would be on you to sort of see if this is possible in whatever system you use. So for example, I'm in my Zoom account. Oh no, so many bad pictures of me. And look, I wear the same scarf every time. But these are the recordings. So we did a session that was called AI for Accessibility and Social Impact. So when I click on that session, first of all, we did that session and we recorded it. And I don't know if you could see, but like 20 people watched the recording because a number of people couldn't make it. So because I've clicked on I've enabled Zoom, which you have to do, you have to enable AI on your Zoom. But we recorded that one video, and look at what I can download. A shared screen with speaker view, just the speaker view, the gallery view, and a shared screen. So those are 4 different video formats that I can download in. audio only. So that's immediately where I download the video I want, I download the audio I want, and then I download the audio transcript. You can even download the closed caption. I didn't do anything to create those alternative formats. Zoom did it all for me. And we find this but this is also because we start with video, right? That's kind of, it just allows us to create all these different things. Now, I want to show you when I download, however, the transcript, I'm going to show you so it's a VTT file, and I know you can't see this well, but I'm going to open it up. Look at it. It's full of numbers, it's full of timestamps, and then it also has the speaker every time. I don't want that in my transcript. But what I then do with this is I take this transcript, I copy and paste it into ChatGPT, and I say, remove all numbers, timestamps, and speaker names from this transcript. And I get the transcript without those things. So that's the kind of easy way that, again, we take something, sort of a transcript, and make sure that it is in the way. And then you could say, put this in paragraph form, for example. And I mean, I could show you a quick version of that. Why don't I just do that? I'm just going to, because I think we have some time, I'm just going to, oh, it doesn't want to let me copy and paste this, of course, because I'm showing you. But believe me, here, let's see, file, edit, select all. And then I'm going to edit, copy, and then just tell me if you're following me here. Are you back on my Zoom screen? Great. So I do use ChatGPT, and I pay for it because we use it quite a bit. So I'm going to say, can you please remove all numbers, timestamps, and names from this transcript? If I can spell transcript. And then I would like a Word document to download, please. You'll notice I use the word please. I like to be kind to the AI. And this was an 1 hour and 25-minute transcript. And so I'm hitting, go do that for me, please. Can you imagine the time it would take me to go in we used to do this. We used to go in and edit out the numbers, all the things. So you can see that was a long transcript. Let's see what, woo! Well, that's so nice of you, AI. The AI created a visual for me. An abstract visual representation. Thanks for that. That's not what I asked you to do. But so sometimes with AI, I like to call it, it's a co-pilot. Sometimes I need to break it down in a couple of steps. So I'm going to say, please remove all numbers, timestamps, and names from the transcript. So sometimes it doesn't like when I give it too many things to do. Has anyone else had this experience? Yeah, so we'll just see. Here's your transcript with all the numbers, timestamp. See, I just gave it that one more thing Now, as you can see here, it's pretty good, but you can see here, I am the strategy lead with SeaChange CoLab. Now, of course, it's spelled that wrong. I am based in Jabuktuk, Halifax. It's spelled that wrong, right? So it's again, just like AI generated closed captions, it's not going to get it right. So you might have to edit for those things. It also spelled the last name of my colleague wrong. But at the very least, like you have, so you may need to do some corrections. Okay, I'm just going to stop to see, does anyone have any questions? I think are there some things in the chat? Nope, just the recording. Any questions about how to create that alternative format, or, you know, what do you have as a starting point? And then how do you create alternative formats from there?
Corey, I would just like to say thank you for showing us how you do this on Zoom because it's really so incredibly efficient. That's probably a question a lot of people were wondering. Do they create a separate audio? Do they create a separate video? Like Zoom is going to do this for you. That's amazing. And as we're doing the accessibility plan updates, as well as the first ever equity and anti-racism plans, so many of them are also nice and short. So, you know, I'd love it if some folks here would, you know, be willing to try this, to do this with their accessibility and equity and anti-racism plans, to record it on Zoom and video, and then you get the audio and the transcript and be able to post those as well. Like that's, you know, it's free and it's basically just your time. And then of course, like you said, to do a little bit of editing with the transcript to make sure that everything matches up.
And so Julie, I'd also throw that back to Amans. I know you post the recordings, but you could, and I'll dare say should also be posting the audio and the transcript, right? Like
Yeah.
you know, every time you kind of post that on your website.
Yeah.
And so just thinking about, and I know in our AI session a few weeks ago, it actually even came up, like, could we be using AI to help us do some of the work around your accessibility and your, you know, equity plans? So again, I just want to sort of say, okay, think about this. So, you know, here we are, we're back in ChatGPT. Remember how long that transcript was, and also what you can see is it didn't do the whole thing. Sometimes you might have to chunk out those transcripts, but I'm going to say, can you please write a half-page summary of the transcript? I wish I could spell. So then it's going to write me a half-page summary. Imagine, so your accessibility plans, you could be saying, could you create an executive summary? Could you, and so, and you can see how quickly it creates that, right? Again, well, there's the 20-60-20 rule. 20, you have to create the prompt. Can you please write a half-page summary? The AI is going to do 60% of that work of writing it. And then the other 20% is I need to go in and make sure that this is the summary that works for me. So really needing to make sure that, you know, you're not just taking this and going, yep, great. Just like you're not taking that transcript and going, oh, here's the transcript. You do have to do that level of editing. So same thing. So this is great that we have a summary. Thank you, thank you, chat, for that. But now I want a plain language summary. Can you please make this plain language at a grade 8 level? So there are different reading levels. Typically, when we do our work at Sea Change, we are aiming for a grade 7 or 8 level, which is sort of considered what a good level when you're doing stuff for the public. And so it's now going to take that and make it plain language. Is it perfect? No, but it's a start, and it's better than kind of not doing that, right? And so let's just think about this first. So look at the difference here. The transcript covers a discussion centered around the implementation and implications of artificial intelligence in enhancing accessibility and social impact, led by blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty big sentence. Instead, we say, plain language is this transcript talks about a workshop focused on using AI to help with accessibility and making a social impact. So much better, so much easier to understand. And again, the benefit goes well beyond even folks with, accessibility needs or with disabilities to low literacy rates, newcomers, all of that. So, I mean, this is one way that we're using AI. Give us a summary. We, for example, use it for our evaluation summaries. So after every training, and we do a lot of them, we do an evaluation. We download and plug all of that into AI and ask for themes. We also ask for unique responses so that we're not just, we want to know the extremes that are good, that are bad, but also the common themes in the middle. So again, that is really about your prompt. Tammy, I see your question. Is there a component of ChatGPT or AI that that does translation? Google Translate, that's AI. Like, do you mean translation into other languages? Is that your question, Tammy?
Yeah, I do. I guess I was just wondering, because I know I've used Google Translate before, but often the grammar is not great.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if it gets honed in on ChatGPT. I'm just getting, I'm scared of the AI. I'm not scared of it, but I've always kind of felt like, what do you mean we can use it?
Right.
Kind of new to me, and I'm just curious if it polishes it, or if it's kind of like what you saw. If you have to go back and edit,
we're gonna live test this. Can you please translate into French? Can you please translate the last summary, because you want to be the last summary, into French? Let's see what I've never asked it this. So, yep, there's a translation now. Is it better than Google Translate? I'd have to do the comparison side by side. So I'm not really sure, but it is, I mean, yeah, it's an option. Now, I'm very curious. Can you translate this into Mi'kmaq? I'm sorry, but I can't translate it into Mi'kmaq. Yeah. Can you translate into Arabic? So what we know in Halifax is that the second most spoken language in Halifax is not French, it's Arabic.
It is in Antigonish County too, surprisingly. We just learned that last night. Came out of the stats can. I'm not sure how, but
yeah,
it was surprising for us. It's a big change.
So there we go. Sure, here's the translation of the summary into Arabic. Now, again, I'm not going to be able to know if that translation is good or not. But there it is, right? And then I'm going to say, how might I be able to translate into American Sign Language? Like I'm sorry, I'm literally, we're using this as a bit of a lab, can we do that? Can we do this? Oops. Because it's still doing the Arabic, it won't let me do the next thing. So Danielle, I see your hand. Yeah.
It'll probably take a while, the Arabic.
Yeah, so I'll keep an eye on that. But Danielle, you had a question.
Yeah, more so, I guess, a comment. So that's something we have been exploring here as well. So in our county, we have a large Acadian community, and in consultation with community, especially around our equity and anti-racism plan, that was something we considered is like, do we present a French copy as well? But in community consultation, what we were told is our French is very regional compared to like a very linear French Francophone dialect. So although, so reading the translation there, yeah, for the most part, it's bang on. But there are little like regional nuances, I guess, that, aren't going to be captured in ChatGPT. So that is something to consider. So yeah, I think it's great. Another use that folks in our community like to use is Google Lens. So just using the Google Lens, and it has a translation option. So if you're looking at a menu, it changes it from English to French.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so any written text that is presented, so if there's documents here at the county office and they're in English, you can literally take your phone, click Google Lens, and it'll translate from English to French right there, all the text. It's pretty neat.
That is amazing. I just put in, can you translate into Acadian French dialect? And ChatGPT said, well, I can provide a translation into standard French. Translating accurately into Acadian French would ideally require a native speaker or a translator to like change those nuances. Yeah.
I was going to ask Corey, because this is not my area of expertise, and I was using Chat GPT the other day, and I was asking about spaganagity, and then of course it came back and with different answers that were not at all related. So how does Chat GPT become, I guess, accustomed or aware or using Mi'kmaq language and names? Like, how does this actually happen?
So chat will remember your information. And so if you're not using the paid version, what you have to know is that chat is taking all the information you're putting into it and adding it to the large language model that it is. I have the paid version, which means, and that's just for like client confidentiality and things like that. It's not training its model using my information. But whether you're on the free or paid version, it's remembering, it's learning about you. So I might start with like, okay, these are the 13 Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia. You might know them as this, but these are the Mi'kmaq names. Like I might try to train chat
Okay.
depending on what you're using it for, to say, so when I say this, I mean, Shubenacadie, or you know what I mean?
Right.
Was formerly called this. And then this is what I want to know. And over time, chat will be able to remember those things. So
Okay.
for example, because I've been using chat for 6 months or 8 months now, I'm actually able to ask it things like, what if you could say the 3 things I do in my work, what would you call them? So I'm asking it to give me feedback on something I haven't even like given it content around, right? If that makes sense. The work we do in this, then what would you recommend around this, for example? So, and even, so someone did ask on our AI training, I'll just put it out there, because there's a template for accessibility plans. They were like, well, could we add the template for the accessibility plans, put our old plan in there, and then say, these are the kinds of changes we want, and would it generate? Yes, it can do that. Now, it may take multiple steps, just to remember that you might have to break it down into multiple steps. So that's just, again, it's not generating the information for you, but it's certainly doing some of that admin work. And the use of AI and ethics and all of that is a whole other workshop, which I'd be happy to do if there's a request for that, Julie. But this is really just to say, how can we start using these tools to generate alternative formats? So I know we're at time, and so thanks everyone. It's been really helpful to even just see your engagement and your questions. Really great.
That was
Can I say
amazing.
something?
Oh, yeah. Sure, go ahead, Lem.
I'd like to tell Corey that I use Good Manners with Alexa, and so I'm just curious on your if you ask the machine or the AI to give a summary of your character,
Yeah,
would it consider the politeness at some point? Because if
absolutely.
it builds
So
up a history,
yeah, I
okay, no, I'll leave it to you.
yeah. You get different results. So 2 people could input the same question and you definitely get different results, I find, when I use just congenial, polite language. And we've tested this in my office, like, okay, you ask the same prompt over here and I'll ask it here. And we get different results based on our chat history, but also based on that constant, just polite language.
Rapport.
Yeah.
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 No, I find that too, because I did a little self-assessment with that, and it turned out that you do to get a different result. It's more
Yeah.
favorable if you're polite, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Really great.
I want to
I'll
thank
just
everybody.
Nice.
Sorry, Lim.
No, I've just said I'll mute myself. And one thing, my green inside my mute button is flickering up and down. And is it because I have a poor
Connection. It might be
Connectivity.
cutting
Yeah.
in and out
Connection?
a little bit.
Yeah. Just a
Is
little
that
bit. Yeah,
Is that what that's telling me?
it is.
And the
Yes.
odd thing, I appreciate what Corey was saying, because my view on accessibility was strictly a ramp or some ability to get into a place easily. So this is all a new game.
Yeah,
But
and it's so
anyway,
important for us to
so
think
is this it?
beyond built environment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm glad.
You used the word. I see I get a delay, even with the new computer, I get a delay in the speech a bit. So I wonder if my connection is weak, or the other day, my wife and I had a fight over Alexa because she wouldn't respond. I could do all my functions, but she wouldn't respond. So we had a debate about Alexa, and it turned out the batteries weren't full charge. So she needed more energy.
More juice.
But AI
Yeah.
consumes a lot of energy. How are they
Yeah.
going to manage that? But I don't trust Alexa and Chatbox GBT or GBT, I guess. But that's only me. But so you guys are putting a lot of you're putting a lot of your information and stuff. Is there any chance that the AI will corrupt itself, or you
Oh, I
go
feel like that's
berserk?
a whole other workshop, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not to fully trust AI, which is why the 20-60-20 rule, where you have to be clear what you're asking of it and then how you're editing
Mhm,
and
mhm.
how you're kind of using that. So
Right.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
just to be mindful of time, I just want to thank everybody and thank Corey very much again. Lots of great comments here. Tammy said these are so rich learnings, and I would totally agree. Just so everybody knows, Corey's going to be back in 2 weeks, March 26th, to do a session on accessible recruitment and hiring. So feel free to join us again. And then there's another one on April the 16th with accessible meetings and events. And Corey just dropped the hint there that they'd be willing to come back and do a session on AI and ethics. And yeah, so that could certainly be something that we'd gladly take you up on, of course. Again, this recording I'll get posted in the next 24 hours onto our link that's in the chat here. And feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have any questions or suggestions or needs for this Accessibility Lunch and Learn. And thanks again to the Accessibility Directorate for sponsoring these learning opportunities. Really great. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Julie, can I chat with you for a second?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just want to let you know that Nicole is going to do the next session
Oh, okay.
instead of me. Just I
Oh, wait, sorry. Let me just stop.
Oh.
I need to, how do I stop recording? There we go. Stop recording.